give or take. Hiroshima, in a few seconds, how many people died? And yet Rasulullah is called somebody who's a terrorist. The society which is around Islam is one which propagates peace, which propagates coexistence. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam Allah, in his time, what did he do? Did he go around and say, Allahu Akbar, he's a Jew, kill him. Allahu Akbar, he's a Christian, kill him, like we've got some people that will come up to us today and say so? No. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam Allah would speak to everybody in the most beautiful way, so much so that when one person who was from the Jewish faith took the shield of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam Allah, his armor, Ali ibn Abi Talib says to him, let's go to court. So they go to the court. This Jewish man knows the position of Ali ibn Abi Talib, that at the time he's the Khalifa of the Muslimin. The judge says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then when he addresses the Jewish person, he addresses him by his name. Here Ali ibn Abi Talib stops him. He says, oh, so and so, you addressed me by my title and you addressed him by his name. Either address the two of us by our names or address the two of us by our titles. I will not be party to any dhulm, to any oppression done. This is like the slightest form of oppression to an individual. Today, if somebody is a doctor and you don't call him, you write to them, Dear Mr. So-and-so. You didn't put Dear Dr. So-and-so. By law, he can take you to court and you can do so much. Ali ibn Abi Talib established this a very long time ago. Justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam Allah, justice of Islam, the freedom in society. Now, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came, he began to eradicate certain things, reform certain things, and introduce certain things. Things which were eradicated was the worshipping of idols. Somebody can turn around and say to you, well, so what if I worship an idol? Why do I need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The point here, when I worship an idol, I need to examine a few things. This idol, is it truly a God? Or is it a tool of somebody who is in power to oppress me? Take for example, in the time of Quraysh, the people of Quraysh had slaves. Now, one of the people, and if I'm correct, I think it was Abu Lahab or Abu Jahl, was beating his slave harshly for no reason. He just came and he was drunk and he started beating the slave harshly. So the slave runs to one of the idols and he grabs the idol. And he says, oh, so and so, whoever this God is, I beseech you, I throw myself at your mercy. Save me from your servant. At this point, Abu Jahl begins to laugh. He says, how ignorant are you? Don't you know that these are what our hands created so that we can control you? This is a form of oppression. When I worship an idol, I have oppressed myself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and we do not oppress them. Nay, for they have surely oppressed themselves. When I worship a human being, when I worship an idol, when I worship a cow, when I worship anything, I have not only insulted the concept of a supreme being, I have insulted my own intelligence. That's the first thing which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam eradicated. Why? To free the minds of mankind. An example of this given before Islam came is in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salamullah. Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salamullah, he destroys the idols, he leaves one. So the people come the next day and they say, oh, who destroyed these idols? They go to Ibrahim because they think he's the troublemaker. They say, you destroyed these idols. Ibrahim says, ask the biggest one. Let him answer you if he truly knows. Here was the first time people truly began to contemplate things. Which means what? They were ignorant. Their minds were oppressed. You don't need to be in shackles and chains to be a prisoner. I can hold you prisoner with my ideology. Islam came to free the mind from all these pollutions which came beforehand. Then Islam came also to reform certain aspects of oppression in Islam. Remove the word oppression from them. For example, slavery. I'm sure some of you might have heard the lecture of Sayyid Ammar Nakshawani. a beautiful lecture. It's available, it's on YouTube. And it's about how did Rasulullah reform slavery. Here in his lecture, Sayyid Aman Akshawani, it's beautiful, he gives so much details, but I want to refer to one thing. He says that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, he didn't eradicate slavery. Now someone might turn around and say, well, that's a bad thing. We should all be free. But imagine 60,000 people, 30,000 people, 200 people. Don't even go to the thousands, 200 people. All of a sudden you freed them. These people have no education. They've been brought from Africa or wherever and put in Arabia. They've got no family. They've got no means of earning a living. You've made them a burden on society. So have I freed these people? Or have I handed them to a different form of oppression where people will turn around at them and treat them like beggars and say, look at this scum and this and that and so on and so whatnot. When Rasulullah reformed slavery, what did he do? It's a gradual movement to stop slavery. It was to take a person and free him and say, you know what, you're not a slave, you'll be a servant. I will employ you. I will actually give you wages. You are free to go wherever you want to, and during the daytime you can do what you want to do. However, at certain times you are in my employment. Because slaves before Islam, if we look, you see people like in the Roman times or the Greek, they had the right to beat their slaves for no reason. I come home, I want to beat my slave, I'll beat him up. There's a saying in Arabic, my father can only beat my mother. That means if my dad had a bad day at work, he's going to beat my mom. Why? Because he knows she's not going to say nothing to him. Slavery was the same thing. The master comes home angry, he beats the slave. There was no form of rights to protect this person. Simply why? Because he was black. Or because he was from a different caste. Islam came to reform that. To say, you know what? You can be black, yellow, green, purple, there's no problem. You don't have to be a slave. But if you was a slave, I don't want to take you and put you in a situation where I'm making life more difficult for you. I want to make you live a life of respect. However, in doing so, you can be my employment. You're free to leave whenever you want to free. Whenever you want to leave, you can leave. And I will pay you. And the best example we have amongst this kind of people is Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam Allah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Sayyidah Fidda Radwanullah alayha wa salamullah alayha. Fatima Zahra says to her, one day you will work, one day I will work. Please, I pray, find me one person, forget a slave, one person who's a manager who will say to someone, look, you work today and I'll work tomorrow, even if you haven't worked tomorrow, I'll still pay you. One person in today's society. Fatima Zahra alayha salamullah. Who is Fatima? She's the one, if anybody deserves to be served, is Fatima Zahra alayhi salamullah. For the knowledge she gave, for the position she held amongst the Muslims in her time, and for the position she holds in our hearts today. Salman al-Farisi alayhi radwanullah, Salman al-Muhammadi, used to stand outside the house of Fatima Zahra and he used to clean the floor with his holy beard. I ask, was Salman under any form of oppression? No. Why? He knows the position this lady holds, that for him it's the greatest honor to be her servant, to be her slave. This is one thing Islam came to reform, slavery. Then Islam came to set new standards. These standards were what? As I gave before the example, the father beating up the mother, Islam came and said this is absolutely not acceptable. Let's examine women's rights before Islam came. In all forms of society. In the times of the Egyptians, in the times of the pharaohs, women held rights. They even held the rights of ownership.